Hi everybody, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a systems model of change and transition because I think it really is relevant for understanding how we can meet people where they're at and understand the larger picture, the bigger picture about what's going on in our world. So, this is essentially a story of living systems that is a model coming out of the Berkana Institute, which is a Meg Wheatley inspired group of people that are changing the world, change agents. And the model is currently taught through the Art of Hosting community and through Meg Wheatley's program, Warrior Spirit. And so let me begin. We talk about peak oil in permaculture sometimes, and that concept of peak oil really is about a turning point in a system where the trend of the dominant culture and all the structures in our energy system are designed for fossil fuel use. And the idea of peak oil is that we've hit this level where there's not as much oil as there once was, and that we're now on a descent, which means that we will be using less fossil fuel in the future, one way or another, like it or not, that's going to happen. So what these precise dates are is all, muddy and murky because of speculation around oil deposits and whatnot, and the secrecy around oil that some oil organizations on the planet have. Anyway, not to get too political. The two loops model has this first loop where your dominant system is. Your dominant system is got structure, it's got power, and it's got fail safes. It's going to protect itself. It's going to be really resilient. Now, what happens, and to stick with the peak oil concept, what happens is people at that moment of the turn and the trend start jumping off. And they step off the system and they say, I'm going to do it a new way. I'm going to innovate. So they design solar systems, solar panels. They design fuel cells. They design other ways to meet the demand for energy, to create a new energy system. And they take a lot of criticism. They get called wackos. There's stereotypes and whatnot for people. But they are naming new systems. They're naming alternate ways of doing things. And they really are pioneering. So these pioneers are naming the new way. Now what happens is, as the old system goes into decline, there is a potential for a lot of people to get hurt. So there's people living on the margins of this dominant system are going to get hurt the worst. And it might be important that some of us are hospice workers that are, anticipating that people are going to get hurt, that they are ready to compost the old way, but they have, care and concern for that old system dying and what that means. Now, as the system progressively declines, these pioneers start making connections with each other. Those connections form a network, and so that network, they have a sense of community. They start sharing their ideas with each other. They connect. And that connection among all of these pioneers into a network is really what makes a little bit more resilience, as this dominant system has a lot of power, and the individuals that have stepped out do not have a lot of power. They can easily be crushed. Deborah Fries uses the example from the Berkana Institute. She uses the example that Jimmy Carter in the 70s put solar panels on the White House. Well, then Ronald Reagan took them off. And that is this moment of, they're stepping out. You don't really have a lot of power, but once you start connecting, you get a little bit more power. So the newest system can emerge. So what happens is these pioneers really start driving the creation of that new system. It's a little bit chaotic, but it's very creative time. And this is a time for nourishing. This time of nourishing can mean relationship and community. It can mean finding funders to see a project off the ground. It's providing safe to fail environments as opposed to fail safes. And sort of this life cycle starts to come up with new stories about how to do things, and then we have people who can illuminate that. So these illuminators are telling the story, hey, there's already a new system over here. You guys all don't have to suffer till the end. Come on over. So they sort of, they've got the light bulb on. They're sort of shining the light and saying, come on over. The hospice person can say, oh, let's do that. Let's see how many people we can transition over to that new way of doing things. There's one more role that I want to point out in the two loops model. It's the protector. So the protector is someone who has power because of this system. They may have made money, they may have influence, they may have standing and status, political influence. They create a bubble that sort of protects the transition. So they're creating a way for all of this to go on. Now, the favorite way I like to think about the two loops model is with the forest system, because the forest system is sort of like the ultimate metaphor for what we're trying to do both in social permaculture and designing forest systems. It's very literal. So when I look at the two loops model, I see the carbon and nitrogen cycle. I see the old forest. When we walk into a rich forest, there is decay all around. The soil on the floor is so black with humus, and there's so much decayed plant matter down there that it's just amazingly rich. At the same time, the new forest is emerging from all of that. So the nitrogen, the animals are, decomposing, and the plants are emerging. And there's just this cycle that keeps going on. So when we look at the mature forest, we see both the old system dying, the structure of that, and the new system emerging at the same time. And it's not to say that we need to design, we need to all be innovators, or we need to all, nourish those inventions, or we all need to tell stories, or we all need to, protect the new system emerging. It's that we're all playing a role at every moment in this grand story of living systems. And knowing where we are in that system is why I brought this up, is it's about knowing what time is it for you. Where do you identify with this story of living systems? And when you're talking to someone else, it would be tremendously helpful to know what time it is for them. And as we navigate the future, as we find pathways to the future, it might get edgy. There might be some fear. We can understand that when we have a model like this. And we can find those key relationships in our communities where we can harness the influence of a protector, the ingenuity of a pioneer, and the communication skills of the illuminator, and the hospice skills of the social worker. And we can bring all of these pieces together to make our world anew. So thanks for listening. And in our very next video, we'll just be summarizing this class, Ethics and Principles in Permaculture.